Okay, these are the notes for section 7.1. 7.1 is on variation. Two principal parts of variation are direct variation and inverse variation. So we're going to be talking about both of those, distinguishing between the two, doing equations with the two. Each one of them has what's called a constant of variation. Now, for our purposes, we're going to use A for the constant. A lot of places use C for the constant or K for the constant, but here we're going to use A. It really doesn't matter. Again, we have direct and inverse. Now, direct variation means as one goes up, the other one goes up. So if X gets bigger and bigger, then Y gets bigger and bigger. That's direct variation. Inverse variation, like direct variation would be like the number of people that buy your product goes up. Well, obviously, the money that comes in, your gross income is going to go up. Or the more hours you work, the more your pay goes up. That's a direct variation. An inverse variation means as one goes up, the other one goes down. So just to kind of write that down, for direct variation, as X increases, Y increases. Or as X decreases, Y decreases. Inverse variation is kind of the opposite of that. Invariation is as X goes up, Y goes down. Or as X goes down, Y goes up. So it might be like the more you charge for a product, the less of them you sell. That would be an inverse variation. Or if you drop the price for something, you sell more of them. That's an inverse variation. Now we have kind of a little equation for both of them. For inverse variation, it's Y equals A over X. And this is read, Y varies inversely as X. So when X is on the bottom, there's a constant on the top. When X is on the bottom, that's Y varies inversely as X. If it looks like this, Y equals the constant times X, that's a direct variation. So Y varies directly as X. And this stuff down here is kind of repeating the same thing. So if it varies inversely, it's Y equals A over X, a constant over X. If it's directly, Y equals a constant times X. The first questions we have here are deciding whether these are direct variation or inverse variation or neither. The best thing to do is solve for Y and see if it matches one of those. Like this first one, if I solve that for Y, first we're going to move the 3x, but I'm going to move them one at a time. I'm going to move the 3 first, so I'm going to divide by 3. So xy equals 1/3. Now I'm going to divide by x. I'm going to leave this 1/3 on the top and put an x on the bottom. Now if you look at that, do you see that that could be y equals a over x, where here your constant is 1/3? So that's an inverse variation, because it matches a constant over x. Same with this one. It's already set up that way. Y equals a constant over x. So that's an inverse variation. This one, we have x plus something. Well, in neither one of our cases did we say if it was added, if something was added. So this is neither. Same with this one. If we solve this for y, we'd get y equals negative x minus 2. So that's a constant, you're subtracting a constant, so that's neither. This one, y equals 4/5 x. Do you see that this could be y equals ax, where a is 4/5? So that one's direct variation. Or this one, if we solved for y, let's see if we move the x to the other side and then divide by negative 8. We're going to have, here we have an 8 on the bottom, but we also have this plus 1 over here, so that's neither, because of that plus 1 that's out there. Or this one sets up exactly like inverse. Y equals x over 7. Well, what if we rewrote that? What if I said that's y equals 1/7 times x? Wouldn't that be the same thing? Well, do you see that that would be ax? So that's direct. Or this one. Here, the fact that we have a 0 messes this one up, because if I move to the other side, if I take 0 divided by 6x, that's just 0, so this is neither. This last one, there was supposed to be a 1 on here. I left that out. That's a typo. It should be y over 9x equals 1. Well, here, if we multiply by 9x, we get y equals 9x. Well, do you see that's like y equals ax? So that's a direct variation again. So you want to solve for y, and then see if it looks like a constant over x, then it would be inverse. See if it looks like a constant times x, then it would be direct. All right, we're going to do the same thing now with these, only here they're from a table. So here we have a relationship between x and y, so we have a set of ordered pairs. We want to decide if this is direct or inverse, or neither. Well, what we want to do is, you want to do two things. Notice here it says take x times y. If you take x times y and all of these get the same number, it's an inverse variation. So if we took x times y here, I get 8, I get 64, I get 216, I get 512, I get 1,000. Notice they're all different. So this is not an inverse variation. Now try y over x. So 4 divided by 2 is 2. 16 divided by 4 is 4. 36 divided by 6 is 6. 64 divided by 8 is 8. 100 divided by 10 is 10. Notice those aren't the same either, so this one is neither. You're looking for it to be the same thing all the way across. Like this one, x times y. 1 times 5 is 5. 5 times 1 is 5. 8 times 0.625 is 5. 20 times 0.25 is 5. 50 times 0.1 is 5. Notice that we have a constant. They're all the same. So if x times y is a constant, that's an inverse variation. Or this next one, if we multiply, 2 times a half is 1. 5 times 1 1/4 is 6.25. 2.1 times 8.4. Have that written down. Anyway, 12 times 3 is 36. 15 times 3.75, but you can see even without, I should have done those on my calculator. It should be obvious by now that it's not going to work out. But so if I take 8.4 times 2.1, I get 17.64. And this last one, 15 times 3.75, I get 56.25. So even with those last two, you can see that those aren't a constant. Now let's try dividing. 0.5 divided by 2 is 0.25. 1.25 divided by 5 is 0.25. 2.1 is a fourth of 8.4, so that's 0.25. 3 divided by 12 is 1/4, 0.25. 3.75 divided by 15, that's also 0.25. So notice here, y over x, they're all the same. Well, if y over x is a constant, that's a direct variation. So that's what you do on the tables. If you take x times y, so if you multiply the two variables together, if they get a constant, that's an inverse variation. If you divide them, y divided by x, and you get a constant, that's a direct variation. If you don't get a constant on either one, then that's neither. The last thing on here is writing an inverse variation. So like here, they're going to give you some, like here it says these vary inversely. They gave us two values. Remember, inversely is y equals a over x. So let's take what they gave us and plug in here. So y is 5. So 5 equals a over x. X is negative 4. So we're going to substitute in what they gave us and solve for a. Well, if I multiply, a is negative 20. So that means my inverse variation is y equals negative 20 over x. Now it says find y when x equals 2. So we're just going to plug in 2 there. Y equals a negative 20 divided by 2 is a negative 10. Same with this one. We have an inverse variation. X is 1, y is 6. Let's substitute in there. So y equals, so if we start with y equals a over x, we know y is 6 equals a over x, which is 1. So we start with that. Now we multiply to get a by itself. A is 6. So that means now our equation is y equals 6 over x. Well, what's y when x is 2? Let's plug 2 in there. 6 divided by 2 is 3. And that's it. That's 7.1.